everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I am sharing with you my overly large May book haul. I bought a lot of books in May. I definitely had a weakness this month. Part of it is that I got very into some series. I got back into other series, and I think at least 3 of these books I actually ordered in April, but they didn't arrive until May. So there's a lot to go over. Because of that, there is going to be a kind of order to which I've organized this. So I think the first book I'm going to start with is like a crafting book, because I don't know how interested you guys will be in that. But something I've been wanting to get into, you may have seen that I did a sewing video. I will link that somewhere up here or down there or both. And I made a tote bag and it took everything out of me, but I am really into sewing, and something that I really wanted to do eventually is make a quilt. So I saw this really beautiful book, The World of Quilts. This is by Cassandra Ellis. And I saw this on Book Depository, and I kid you not, it was 76% off. So I think it was normally something like 25 or 27 pounds, and it was £7 on sale. And there's just so many nice quilts in here that I can't wait to try my hand at. Let me just find, I really like this one actually. This is called G's Bend. It's so big you can't even see me. And as well as being just really beautifully photographed. There's another one that I really like. This is called The Housetop. And I like that the focus of this book is largely on using scraps that you already have at home, so you don't have to buy new fabric, using fabric that you already have lying around the house, even if that's from maybe clothes that don't fit anymore or that you don't wear anymore. And as well as being really beautifully photographed, there are really concise and well-written instructions on how to make each quilt. So yeah, I'd love to make a quilt at some point. I'll probably start with something super easy. I think the first one in the book is literally just squares, and that's, yeah, something like that. And that's probably what I'll do first. But I am really interested in quilting, and it's something I would really like to get into. I love my coziness and my cozy blankets, so I did pick this up when it was on super sale on Book Depository. That is the only crafting book I got this month. The next few books are different series that I'm either continuing, or I read the first book in the last month, which I'll review obviously in my wrap-up. And I just enjoyed it so much that I continued on. So the first 3 books I'm going to show you are by Dorothy L. Sayers. They are part of the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery series, which is like an interwar years mystery series about Lord Peter Wimsey, and he is a very funny kind of accidental detective. And I really enjoy them. So I've read the first 2. So these are books 3, 4, and 5. Is it 3, 4, and 5? I think so. Yeah, I think it's 3, 4, and 5. So I got Unnatural Death, The Unpleasantness of the Bellona Club. I keep wanting to say Belladonna, but it's the Bellona Club, and Strong Poison. The way I described this series to my husband when I was talking about how much I love it and why I love it is it's like Bertie Wooster in P.G. Wodehouse solving like Agatha Christie mysteries. So it's got the humor and the wit and that kind of quickness of Wooster, but they're like Agatha Christie style mysteries, so they are generally murder mysteries. They're so cozy and light and lovely, and so if you like Agatha Christie or if you like kind of cozy mysteries, I really recommend Dorothy L. Sayers. She's wonderful. And Hodder, yeah, have republished all of her books, I think all of her books, in these really beautiful editions. I should also say too, there are some short story collections that kind of go between the books, but I've decided to read the short story collections when I finish the novels. So these are the next, I read the first 2 novels, these are the next 3 novels in the series. I believe there's about 15 novels and maybe 2 or 3 short story collections. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this series because it is quickly becoming a favorite of mine. And then a series that I read, I can't really call it the first book. I read a book in the series as recommended to me by a friend of mine, and I enjoyed it so much that I ordered 2 more books in the series, is the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, and I picked up Mort and I picked up Weird Sisters. So the reason I say I don't know if I read the first one, I read Equal Rights last month, and it's so good, but I picked up Mort because I've also heard that it's a good kind of entryway into the Discworld series, but within the Discworld series there are books that they're kind of like sub-series or books that go together. So Weird Sisters is kind of the next one that goes after Equal Rights. Mort is the start of another sub-series within the Discworld. So the kind of witches, I want to call it, the witches series, it doesn't have like an official name. These books are about a group of witches, mostly centered around Granny Weatherwax. And the Discworld series is very much a patriarchal society where wizards are men and they are seen as the like superior form of magical being, but the witches definitely kick some butt, and so I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Granny Weatherwax featured in Equal Rights, but she wasn't the main character, where she definitely seems to be the main character in this one. Mort is the start of a series where I believe, because obviously I haven't read it yet, Death takes on an apprentice and his name is Mort. There's lots of puns and like wordplay in Terry Pratchett. But he takes on an apprentice named Mort, and it's about them doing their work. They're very funny. I don't want to go too much into Equal Rights because obviously it'll be in my wrap-up, but even though I didn't grow up reading Terry Pratchett, this is the first time that I'm really getting into his novels, it still felt like a nostalgic kind of read for me. It's like a warm hug. They're so enjoyable, they're so funny, they're so witty and clever, and I just really love them. And they've kind of kicked off a bit of a fantasy mood for me, so I am hoping to read more of these in June. It's June. And then the next book I actually also read. I read this book in May, but I read it on audio and I just wanted to get a physical copy because I collect these editions, and that is Agatha Christie's Dead Man's Folly. I won't say too much about this either because like I said, I read it. But this is about a kind of murder mystery writer, and she helps with this murder mystery party. But the girl who, well, I don't know if I should give this away. Anyway, there's a murder, and it's a Poirot mystery. I did enjoy it. It's not one of my favorites, especially now I feel like I'm comparing everything to Murder in Mesopotamia since I read that in April and loved it so much. But I did enjoy this one, and I mean, the facsimile editions are gorgeous. They're always super pretty. So I picked that up. And then the next 3 books I'm going to show you are not from a series, but they're from the same publisher. And it's the first time I've ever bought these books for myself. I'm so excited and I can't wait to buy more and collect more because I am a book collector after all. and they are Persephone books, very excitingly. So I got 3 Persephone books, and I ordered them straight from Persephone so that I could support the publisher during these difficult times, because I do try and do that if I can. I'm not always able to do it, but I do try and do it if I can. So the first one I got is Brooke Evans by Susan Glaspell. So as I'm not fully sure what the Persephone books that I bought are about, I just read really good reviews of them. I'm gonna have a little bit of a hard time describing them, but I think Brooke Evans by Susan Glaspell is about a woman or girl who gets pregnant and has to have an abortion. I could be getting that so wrong. And if I am, I apologize, but I remember hearing a really good review of this and just instantly being intrigued. So I picked up Brooke Evans, and then I picked up 2 from Persephone's kind of classics editions. So Persephone does this thing where if they publish a book and it sells really well and it's really well loved, they will publish it again in a form that has paintings on them instead of the typical kind of grey and white covers. So I picked up 2 of those. This one I picked up for the title. I don't know what it's about. I picked up The Homemaker by Dorothy Cranfield Fisher. If I'm remembering correctly, this is about a woman who is a homemaker and takes care of her children, but really desires to go out into the workforce. And her husband is out in the workforce, as was quite typical of that time, and he actually quite desires being at home. And then some kind of circumstance forces them to essentially switch those roles, and she finds that she really thrives out in the workforce, and he finds that he really thrives at home. And I think it's kind of a study, a meditation, if you will, on that. And I'm just so looking forward to it. It was published in 1924, so it was a radical idea for books at that time, or for anything at that time really, to imagine the female and the male switching those roles. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be pretty excellent. And then I also picked up like the classic of classics for Persephone. I think everybody's read this. And that is Someone at a Distance by Dorothy Whipple. All I really know about this is it's about a marriage. I am just coming up to my first wedding anniversary, and so books that kind of look at marriage or meditate on marriage, they really appeal to me at the moment. And Dorothy Whipple, I think, is probably one of, if not the most popular author from Persephone. As far as I know, they are the only company that is republishing or still publishing her books. And this is a very popular one, and most of the reviews have been great. So I am super looking forward to picking that one up. And then the next 2 books I picked up, I've read before, so I'm just gonna go through them really quickly. The first one I read quite recently, you'll recognize the title, and that is The Inimitable Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse. As you guys know, I've been getting really into Wodehouse lately, and I love these Everyman Wodehouse editions. I just think they're so pretty. Like, oh, they're so nice, and they look so, I've seen them all together. Oh, they're cloth bound too. I didn't even notice that under the dust jacket. I've seen them all together on a bookshelf at Waterstones, and I love the way they look. They've got this very kind of old-fashioned, it kind of reminds me of the collection of Wodehouse my grandfather had growing up. So I picked up this one because I've already read it. I think I'm going to pick up the ones that I've already read first, because Lewis has paperback versions of them, and I'll read those first and then get through more unread ones in the hardback edition. The next book I'm going to tell you about really quickly because you've probably seen it everywhere, and I mean, this is such a throwback for me, and I'm also currently filming a vlog of me rereading this book, so I don't want to say too much. I'm not going to say much at all, but I picked up Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. My Twilight editions are back in Canada, so I had to pick up new additions. I don't have the rest of the series so far, I just got the first one because I am vlogging myself rereading the first one. So yeah, I'm not going to say too much about that. I'm not embarrassed. I loved Twilight in high school. I was a total twihard. I was massively Team Edward. And that's all I'm going to say because I talk a lot about it in my vlog. And finally, I have 6 books that are just kind of in the random category. They're not part of a series. Well, some of them are, but they're like the first book in a series. I'll start with the one that I read in May, so I'll talk about this more in my wrap up, but I picked up Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This is I think I almost called it a Regency romance. It's not the Regency period, it's the suffragette period, and it is a romance novel about a girl who applies to Oxford and goes but on the scholarship of the suffragette movement. So she basically gets sponsored by the suffragette movement on the proviso that she takes part in, they're protesting the amendment of the Women's Marriage Act, which basically means that, at the time anyway, it meant that if women were married and their husband passed away, then none of the land owning or really money went to them, and they want this to go to them because then it would give women the vote. It's part of a larger thing of giving women the vote. Anyway, Annabelle, I think is Annabelle Archer, who's our protagonist, she ends up kind of running in and trying to convince this duke to help them with their cause, and romance ensues. That's all I'm gonna say. It has one of my favorite tropes, which is the hate to love trope, which I do really enjoy. And yeah, I'm always afraid I'm gonna say too much because this is not a wrap up, but it was good. And if you like romance, I do recommend it, especially if you read the Girl Meets Duke Tessa Dare series. For me, wasn't quite as good as that, but it's very similar. I also picked up this month The Diviners by Libba Bray. I have been meaning to read this book for years, and I can't believe I'm only now picking this up. I mentioned earlier that I'm in a massive fantasy mood, and this is a fantasy, a YA fantasy, I believe. That takes place in like the 20s in New York City. Yeah, I believe it's like the 20s in New York City, and it's like fantasy, but it's also like a murder mystery, and it sounds great. Lots of people have loved this. I believe all the books in this series are officially out now, so I could kind of binge it if I really like the first one. But I am looking forward to that one. I picked up a lot of these are first books in a series. I don't know what it is with me in series this month, but I picked up The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, which is another series. This is a book about books. It takes place in 1945, where a man brings his 10-year-old son Daniel to a labyrinthine library of forgotten titles hidden in the city of Barcelona. Daniel pulls out The Shadow of the Wind by Julian Carax, and as he grows up, several people seem inordinately interested in his find. And I believe it's about kind of literary discovery, and it goes more into that. It says, a case of literary curiosity turns into a race to discover the truth about the life and death of Julian Carax, and to save those he left behind. So I believe this is a series of 4 books, 4 or 5 maybe. There is a picture in here, I saw it, of the series. 4. Yeah, there's 4 books in this series, and I've heard nothing but really great things, so I wanted to check this out. I also love this edition. I'll be honest, like, I had the first 2 books on my bookshelf, and I got them from used bookstore, but I saw this edition, and I was like, ugh, I really want it. So I bit the bullet and got this really pretty edition, and the rest of the books come in this edition too, so if I like it, I can continue. I got another first book in a series. I'm like really repeating myself. This is another cozy mystery as well. So I got the Julia Chapman Dale's Detective series, and the first one is Date with Death. I don't really know anything about this. I know that it takes place in the Yorkshire Dales. It's like a countryside murder mystery series that I don't think each book is connected by plot, but they are connected by the detective, Samson O'Brien. And he sets up the Dales Detective Agency after he leaves the police force and moves to the Yorkshire Dales. So it's kind of like Poirot, where the books are connected by a character, not necessarily a plot. The reason I found out about these books is actually by the cover. So I follow an artist and illustrator on Instagram called Emily Sutton. She also illustrated the cover of Fierce Bad Rabbits, which I did a book review of on my blog, and I talked about here on one of my wrap-ups, I think. And I just love her artwork. And so I was looking at her website and saw that she did the covers for this series and read about it and was very, very interested. You guys know I love my cozy mysteries, so I picked up the first book in that, and yeah, I think I'm gonna really, really like it. I don't know what year this takes place in. I don't know if this is also kind of like an interwar years, but I know that this is a countryside cozy mystery series, and so I am looking forward to reading that and seeing how I get on with it compared to the other cozy mysteries that I tend to read but are generally written by authors who have passed. So looking forward to that. And then the next book I have is the first book in a series called The Cazalet Chronicles, and that is The Light Years by Elizabeth Jane Howard. This is actually a historical fiction series. This is more of like a family saga series, so it features in on, I believe, the Cazalet family, if I'm not mistaken. The four brothers, Hugh, Rupert, Edward, three brothers, yeah, Hugh, Rupert, and Edward Cazalet. And every summer they take their wives and their children back to their Sussex countryside childhood home. And it just kind of explores the relationships, explores the kind of happinesses in each life and the difficulties. It says that Hugh is haunted by memories of battle in France and is terrified of the prospect of another war. Edward, who escaped the war unscathed, is more concerned with matters close at hand. His wife, Villy, desperately bored after her life as a dancer, is unaware of his continuous infidelities. Rupert, the talented painter, finds that he cannot both paint and be married to his beautiful and demanding wife, Zoe. And I think it's going to be a very character-focused book. I think it's going to be a book that looks a lot at relationships and just difficulties that people deal with from their past. I heard Lucy from Lucy the Reader, she just read this last month, I think, for the first time, and really enjoyed it. And I love her classics recommendations. So I think this is going to be a really good one to dip in and out of, and I love historical fiction. And it is a chunk, but the font is pretty big. So I think it'll be an easy one to get through. And then the last book I'm going to show you is actually a non-fiction, and it is The Rat Line: Love, Lies and Justice on the Trial of a Nazi Fugitive by Philippe Sands. Philippe Sands also wrote East-West Street, which I haven't read and I don't have, but I've heard amazing things about and has been nominated for like all the awards. So I'm hoping to pick that up eventually. This is the nonfiction book about the trial of a man, I'm gonna try and pronounce his name, SS Brigadefuhrer Otto Freier von Wachter, I believe. And he was a governor of Galicia. He presided over an authority on whose territory hundreds of thousands of Jews and Poles were killed, including the family of the author's grandfather. Oh my gosh! The author's grandfather. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was such a personal connection. Wow, that really, okay, wow. So yeah. It says, by the time the war ended in May 1945, he was indicted for mass murder. Hunted by the Soviets, the Americans, the Poles, and the British, as well as a group of Jews, Wachter went on the run. He spent 3 years hiding in the Austrian Alps, assisted by his wife Charlotte, before making his way to Rome, where he was helped by a Vatican bishop. He remained there for 3 months. While preparing to travel to Argentina on the Rat Line, he died unexpectedly in July 1949, a few days after spending a weekend with an old comrade. So apparently this book is an account of the daily life of a senior Nazi and fugitive and his wife, and it draws on a family kept archive of letters and photos and research. Obviously I didn't understand that there was going to be such a personal connection between the author and the subject matter, clearly. So that makes me even kind of more excited to read it. A little bit tense, I suppose, because obviously that's going to be quite emotional. This is supposed to be really great as well. I've heard also really great things about this. The reviews have been excellent, and apparently Sands's writing is pretty phenomenal. So I think that's going to be an interesting and enlightening read. So finally we're at the end. I think that was something like 20 books, but those are all the books that I picked up in the month of May, or at least were delivered in the month of May. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be posting my May wrap up very soon, so look out for that, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!